He's stretched out on a stone ledge, filling the whole width of the canvas. His hands are locked together, every muscle pulled tight. His face is half hidden, but under the crook of his elbow, a look. Direct, unblinking, too human. And it unsettles you. Not because he looks monstrous, because he looks familiar. There are no horns here, no fangs, no darkness of hell, just humiliation, rage, and a single tear sliding down the cheek of a being who was once the most beautiful thing God ever made. This is The Fallen Angel by Alexandre Cabanel. 1847. Oil on canvas. Musée Fabre, Montpellier, France. And it's one of the most personal, most furious, most deceptively beautiful paintings of the 19th century. Let's start with what you're actually looking at. Lucifer lies in the lower half of the canvas, almost spilling out of the frame toward you. His body is flawless, classical muscle, as if carved from marble by an ancient sculptor. Cabanel knew the Belvedere torso by heart.
For months he'd copied Michelangelo and Raphael in the palaces of Rome. And he poured all of that knowledge into the body of a fallen archangel, on purpose, with brutal precision. Because here, beauty isn't decoration, it's a weapon. God made Lucifer perfect. That's part of what makes this a tragedy. Look closely at the wings. The right one is spread out in full glory, the left barely visible. And here's what matters. At the base, where the feathers meet the rock, they darken into deep blue-brown tones. The higher you look, the lighter they get. A border between two worlds, painted with surgical precision. He hasn't fully fallen yet. Or he has, but heaven hasn't quite let go of him. That distinction matters. Now look up. The top half of the painting is everything he lost. A pale lavender grey sky, almost weightless, almost abstract. And rising through it, in an endless procession, are angels. Pure, joyful, dissolving into light. Cabanel described them in a letter to a friend as beings who ascend to God in chaste and pure glory, praising Him. They don't look down. They don't need to. They're already somewhere He'll never reach again. The contrast between the dark foreground and the bright sky isn't just a painting technique. It's the gap between two natures, two fates, two races of beings, in the artist's own words. One is doomed, the others aren't. Alexandre Cabanel was born in 1823 in Montpellier. By 11, he was already taking art classes. By 17, he'd entered the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris. By 22, he'd won the Prix de Rome, the highest honor a young French painter could receive. That meant 5 years in Rome, 5 years at the Villa Medici, surrounded by Raphael's frescoes and ancient sculpture, all paid for by the state. It was a golden ticket. In 1846, Cabanel sent a large canvas called Oreste to Paris for the required annual review. The academics were furious. Poor composition, wrong format. That was their verdict. The painting was rejected. Cabanel was devastated. He'd worked on it for months. Living alone in Rome, he'd written to his friend and patron, Alfred Bruyas, that he had nothing in his life but his art. And then, rejection. So he painted The Fallen Angel.
The painting has a specific source: John Milton's Paradise Lost, the epic poem from 1667. Milton opens his story with Lucifer already in hell, already aware of his defeat, already gathering up the pieces of his pride. Cabanel chose a different moment. Not hell, not resignation. The very first second after the fall. The moment the archangel has just hit the rock, heaven is still right above him, and the angels are still singing up there. And he can hear it. That's what makes it unbearable. This is what he wrote to Bruyas. I'm depicting two beings, two races, one relentlessly doomed, destined for evil and misfortune, bound to fall.
The other, pure and innocent, rising radiantly to God, glorifying Him. The main subject of my painting is the genius of evil, Satan. The one God once gave the beauty of His own grace, a broken power, bowing his head before the Creator he dared to defy, but still hiding the shame of his defeat, proud, desperate, thirsting for revenge. Read that again. Hiding the shame of his defeat. That's what the raised right hand in front of his face is. That's what the clenched fingers mean. This isn't someone resting. This is someone who can't bear to show his face and looks at you anyway. Through the gap, sideways, full of hatred and tears at once. One brushstroke decides everything. The tear, just one, sliding down Lucifer's cheek from a reddened eye. Without it, this would just be a painting about rage. With it, it's a catastrophe. Because that tear undoes everything we're used to believing about this character. Medieval art painted the devil as a hideous monster. Twisted horns, leathery bat wings, a beast's snout. Fear was his main weapon. Artists made him repulsive on purpose, so viewers wouldn't be tempted, only repelled. Cabanel did the exact opposite. He painted the devil beautiful and weeping. Which means Lucifer isn't just evil, he's wounded. He didn't just rebel against God, he was rejected by God. And that's an enormous difference. After all, Lucifer in Latin means light bearer, the morning star. He was the first, the favorite. And that single tear on his cheek reminds us of that so precisely, so cruelly, it's almost unbearable to look at. In 1847, the painting went to Paris, and it was rejected again. The academics tore it apart, point by point. Faulty movement, imprecise drawing, unsatisfactory execution. But the real objection was something else entirely. No pre-de-Rome scholar had ever dared to send the Academy a painting of the devil.
Art history had its rules about which subjects were acceptable. Lucifer wasn't one of them. On top of that, the jury found the painting too romantic, too passionate, too personal. Academic art demanded cold perfection, distance between the artist and the subject. What Cabanel had painted felt like raw, living grief. He wrote back to Bruyas with undisguised bitterness. So this is the reward for all the effort I put in, not to send them something mediocre. Later he added, in short, I've now become something like a renegade of their school. Renegade, outcast, exile. Wait, where have you heard that before? This is the point where the painting stops being just a painting. Cabanel painted the fallen angel right after the Academy rejected Orestes. He'd arrived as an obedient student, copying Raphael, memorizing anatomy, following the rules, painting Christ in Gethsemane, Christ before Pilate, exactly what was expected of him. And he was rejected anyway.
Lucifer in this painting isn't just a biblical figure. He's a mirror, an artist rejected by the very system he wanted to serve, a being cast out by the one he considered his creator. Both look up from below at those who rose higher. Both hide their expression behind clenched hands. Both are proud and broken at the same time. This isn't a metaphor invented after the fact. It's literally what happened. Cabanel painted this alone, in a foreign city, after a failure, telling a friend he had nothing left but his work. He poured into Lucifer everything he couldn't say to the Academy directly. That's why the tear matters so much. It isn't the devil's tear. It's human. It's his. History eventually set the record straight, just not right away. In 1851, Cabanel presented The Death of Moses and finally got the recognition he'd been waiting for. The critic Théophile Gautier wrote in La Presse that this was painting closest to the sublime, serious, profound art embodied by Michelangelo and Raphael. His career was saved. In 1863, Napoleon III personally bought his The Birth of Venus straight off the exhibition wall. Cabanel became a professor at the École des Beaux-Arts, the favorite portraitist of high society, an academic among academics. But the fallen angel outlived all of that. It, not Venus, not any of his grand historical paintings, became his most reproduced, most recognizable work. Because it has something the others don't. Pain. Real, raw, personal pain. And you can't really talk about the fallen angel without talking about the birth of Venus. Because these two paintings are the two poles of the same man. The Birth of Venus was painted in 1863. The goddess reclines on the waves, one arm bent by her face, a pose that, at first glance, almost mirrors Lucifer's. But everything else is the opposite. The art historian Robert Rosenblum put it well. This Venus exists somewhere between an ancient goddess and a modern daydream. Her gaze drifts away. She doesn't look back. You watch her. She doesn't watch you. With Lucifer, it's the reverse. He looks first, from under his elbow, straight at you. And that's unbearable. Venus is the Cabanel the world accepted. The fallen angel is the Cabanel he actually was. That's why the birth of Venus hangs in the Musée d'Orsay and shows up in textbooks. And the fallen angel became a poster on a wall. This is a painting about giving everything you have and being told it wasn't enough. About lying on the ground, looking up at the ones who keep flying. About how beauty and being right aren't the same thing. And how sometimes the most honest things we make are the very things we get punished for. Lucifer is looking at you from under his elbow. And if you've ever been honest with yourself, even once, you recognize that look. If there's a painting whose secrets you want us to uncover, tell us in the comments. See you in the next episode.